Okay? And then assume that player 2's, so what does she conclude? So if player 1's belief is that, if Chris's belief is that Pat will go to the opera knowing that Chris would go to football, that basically means that Chris interprets Pat's behavior, player 1 interprets player 2's behavior as mean. You thought I was going to go to football and you went to opera anyway? Pfft, where's this relationship going? You know, we need to talk. So player 1 now has a trade-off. In terms of material payoffs, it's obviously still beneficial to go and join mean old Pat at the opera, right? You can imagine this, they have to be seated together. There has to be some suffering involved here, right? But the psychological payoff, right? She wants to get the psychological payoff of being mean in response to being mean in response to mean behavior. So these two things are cutting against each other. And if the psychological payoffs are large enough, then you could see player 1, Chris, choosing to go to opera and giving up, in this case, a solid 2 units of utility. If the psychological payoff for being mean in response to mean behavior is greater than 2, then going to the football would be the right thing to do. Or not right, but utility maximizing. And then we can apply exactly the same reasoning to Pat. If Pat thinks, oh, so you knew I was going to go to the opera, did you? And you went to football anyway? Well, then screw you, I'm going to stick with the opera. Okay? So basically what we've got here is the expectation of miscoordination creates an atmosphere of hostility. And in that atmosphere, players actually do want to miscoordinate. Now, you can sort of see that it's now more or less impossible. Basically, like now what we've just shown is that all possible outcomes here are fairness equilibria in this game. So we've gone from Nash equilibrium, which is dissatisfying to the extent that that it gives us 2 equilibrium. We don't have to choose between them, so we have no way of making predictions. Right? So this is normatively nice, but in terms of positive economics, not helping us make predictions. We made the situation even worse here. Now we've introduced this concept of fairness equilibrium. We've shown that any outcome could conceivably be an equilibrium, which I find believable, right, in terms of explaining what happens, but it's absolutely useless in terms of predicting what happens. Okay? And I don't know what to say about that, other than there's more work to be done here. Yeah. That's right. So when I say, let's get back to where we were. If this is here, right? Right. So basically, what we're doing here, again, this has to do with the difference between predicting what people will do and determining whether or not a certain outcome can be an equilibrium. And it's true with Nash as well. With the Nash equilibrium, we're always asking the question, not would players do this, but given that that's the outcome, could either one of them been better off if they deviated? So we start with the observed outcome, which is that they fail to coordinate. And we say, based on that, what would their beliefs have had to have been? Given those beliefs, would deviating have been better for them? Now, granted, if they deviated, their beliefs would have become wrong, but we're basing what we think their beliefs were on what they actually wound up doing, and then asking whether or not their action was optimal given those beliefs. Does that make sense? Again, I'm really trying to emphasize, this is a way of explaining whether or not something could have arisen, not at all predicting whether or not it actually did arise, or whether it actually would arise. Okay. So that's about that. That's about fairness equilibrium. And the way to go with this, again, is you start by looking at a particular, you can't predict anything, hang on one second, you can't predict anything from this, but you might be asked a question like, could this outcome be a fairness equilibrium? And the steps to take are, 1, based on the outcome, figure out what beliefs must have been in order for those beliefs to have been correct, which is part of the definition of fairness equilibrium. 2, given those beliefs, was each player's behavior deemed nice or nasty by the other player? 3, given the intentions that we've now determined, nice, nasty, could the psychological payoffs that people got, like did the person play mean in response to mean, could those psychological payoffs, when combined with the material payoffs, conceivably have resulted in this outcome being utility maximizing for the 2 players? Okay. So you've got RRR week to listen to this, to listen to the webcast and actually make sure you wrote that down correctly. I apologize for not actually having it on slide. Okay, let's move on. Natural question economists always want to ask is, that's all very well and good in a laboratory setting, but we have this big, huge hammer that we carry around that we smash things with, which is competition. Competition will smash that odd result. In a competitive market, this silly, soft-hearted, murky social preferences nonsense will just be smashed, and people will behave in exactly the ways that our rational models predict. All right. So here's an experiment. Sorry, I don't know who et al. Is in this case. But they basically, I'm going to show you a couple different experiments where people actually introduce competition. And the first dimension is let's have proposer competition. Okay. So you have for each responder, it's almost like you can imagine multiple suitors all trying for the hand of the same desirable person. So there's 9 different proposers who they're all given the same size pie, right? Slice the pie and make an offer to the person you're wooing, and that pie is determined by SI for each proposer I. They all make an offer which is between 0 and 1. What proportion of the pie are you going to offer to the person you're wooing? And then this one responder decides whether or not to accept or reject only the highest offer, right? So the experimenter takes the highest offer and says, you like that or not? And then if they reject the highest offer, then nobody gets anything. And if they accept it, then the highest offer is implemented and all the other proposers get nothing. Okay? So the rejection is a bit more sweeping. What's the result? Offers approach 1, rejection approaches 0. Exactly what you would expect without any social preferences at all. Okay? I don't really want to give you the whole pie, but I want to get something, and I know that if I don't give you the whole pie, or almost all of it, somebody's gonna. So if I got to beat out the others. I don't really want to buy you a new car and let you, and whatever. But I know that somebody out there is going to buy you a new car, so I won't even get out on a date with you if I don't. So boom. Okay. Then let's look at the flip side. What about responder competition? Okay. So there's one proposer, and then there are 3 different responders who get to decide whether to accept or reject. So if none of them accept, if the offer is so stingy that they all 3 say, "Oh, wait, we don't want your little crummy slice of pie," then nobody gets anything. If 1 or more of them accept, then the offer is implemented for the proposer and one of the randomly chosen acceptors. Right? So basically, the shoe's on the other foot now. Yeah, this is kind of a stingy offer, but if I don't accept it, somebody else will, and I'll be left out in the cold. Right? So, so it's like another. So which is right. So if you were going to reject the offer, you were going to be left out in the cold anyway. But what's different in this game is that in the absence of competition, if you reject the stingy offer, you get to impose a meaningful penalty on the stingy proposer. With competition, if you say, well, I'm going to reject because I think you're a stingy so-and-so, you're taking the risk that somebody else is going to be a little bit less punitive than you, and really just a little bit more purely self-interested, in which case your attempt to punish the stingy proposer will be eliminated, will be obviated, and so you won't have that same power of punishment. And what you see is that offers go down from 0.3 to 0.15, not all the way to 0, but pretty close, and the rejection rate goes pretty much to 0. Okay, so which is the exact outcome, very close to the exact outcome predicted by Nash equilibrium, which is that proposers give virtually nothing and rejectors always say yes. Responders always say yes. So it appears that competition kind of drives out anything that we could think of as being evidence of social preferences at all, right? Responder behavior approximates pure self-interest, right? In the sense that rejection goes away. Rejection goes away. Not necessarily because they don't have the power of rejection, but because proposer behavior approximates pure fear of rejection, pure self-interested fear of rejection, which is to say there doesn't actually have to be any real punishment. The threat of punishment, a competition introduces such a strong threat of punishment that no punishment actually happens, and as a result, the proposers know that they can get away with giving virtually nothing. Okay? So we could say that the proposer in both cases basically just gives whatever they think they can get away with. In the first set of experiments, the smallest slice you could get away with was getting the whole pie, and in the second set of experiments, the smallest slice you could get away with was giving almost nothing. And that's exactly what proposers do. They just do exactly whatever they can get away with, which is a really important lesson in life, especially if you're going into management. People will pretty much systematically do whatever they think they can get away with. Somebody will, anyway. And if you're managing a pool of people, somebody in that pool is going to do whatever they can get away with. Okay. Now, I don't know if it's the same paper or not, but there's this really, I think it's the same Roth et al., and I'm sorry that I have not read these papers recently enough to remember. I think it's the same game. And they did this in 4 different countries, and we've seen this actually, I touched on these results a couple of lectures ago. They did it in the United States, in the old Yugoslavia, in Israel, and in Japan. And what they found was that there was some interesting, in 2-player bargaining games, right, where there was no competition, they found some interesting patterns. So in the US and in Yugoslavia, so we have like the capital of generosity and Tito's sort of lovely Leninist communist paradise, and offers are relatively high. The modal offer is half. Okay. Then in Israel and in Japan, I'm not going to cast any aspersions on either of these countries, but the modal offer was a little bit less than half, a little bit less generous. However, it's also the case that the rejection rate was higher in the US and in Yugoslavia than it was in Israel and Japan, which means to say that the modal offer, let's say, for example, in the US, which is a bit higher, may not have been driven by any kind of generosity whatsoever, but just out of knowing that people in the US are more punitive of small offers. And it turns out that, in fact, the modal offer in all of these countries, high here, slightly lower here, is exactly profit maximizing, given the observed rejection rates in those countries. Okay? Nonetheless, there are these cultural differences. Okay? Potentially non-trivial. It's 10 percentage point difference in the outcome in these bargaining games as a result of some cultural difference. Okay? All of that difference goes away when they introduce competition, and the outcomes become completely identical across countries, and exactly the same as what we just saw in the previous slide, 2 slides ago. Okay, which to me, I have become relatively. I mean, I hope I've given the impression that I'm relatively sympathetic to mainstream economics. I've become moderately stodgy in my as I approach middle age. I don't consider myself to be a wild-haired radical, but in my youth, I was actually a member of the Socialist Worker Party and considered myself to be a revolutionary communist. That part of me finds these results rather delightful. Right? This is a story about the alienation of the marketplace. Right? Markets just force us all to be purely self-interested automatons. They eliminate cultural distinctions. They eliminate anything approaching any kind of concern for one another, and they just make us all hard-bitten meanies. Okay? I don't know if that's really what's going on here, but it's interesting, right? From a sociological point of view, or if you're interested in the kind of economics that got squelched by the neoclassical movement in the late 1800s, that's to say, if you're interested in Marxism or anything else really interesting like that, this is a compelling result. But it's not clear that it's the whole story, right? Even in a purely capitalist, highly competitive scenario. So let's take a look at labor markets. So I talked at the beginning of the lecture about the way that labor markets often involve, almost always involve, very incomplete contracts. And they're not the only markets that involve incomplete contracts, right? Insurance is an incomplete contract. What I'd really like to do is to insure your house against fire and then command you to put in smoke detectors and fireproof stuff and hide your matches from your kids. But I can't actually do that. So I have to introduce some kind of complicated stuff to incentivize you to do the right thing under the contract. Labor markets the contracts are hopelessly incomplete in a lot of cases. Often I can't even observe your behavior, much less specify exactly what it should be. And the other thing about labor markets is that in terms of sort of the intersection of microeconomics and macroeconomics, right, we all know that macroeconomics as a field, well, everyone who's not paid to be a macroeconomist by now knows that macroeconomics as a field has been completely discredited, right? All macroeconomists knew that and believed it for about 6 months at the end of 2008, at the beginning of 2009, then they all went right back to the Kool-Aid and started making predictions again on the basis of models that they had just used to fail to predict the financial meltdown. But I don't want you to think that I have any bias whatsoever towards microeconomics as opposed to macroeconomics. At the intersection of micro and macroeconomics, the big mover is the labor market. Right? So we have models of markets that work okay in lots of places, and we have models of the ways in which markets don't work okay, and those models of market failure, and those models work pretty well. So our models of the way markets fail don't fail, for the most part. But in labor markets, all bets are off. And furthermore, the labor market is one of the big engines in macroeconomics, right? And it's one of the biggest places where you see puzzles in macroeconomics. So here's a couple of puzzles at the intersection of micro-labor economics and macroeconomics. In recessions, wages do not go down. They do eventually. This recession's been long enough. Eventually, wages begin to go down. But by and large, in recessions, wages don't go down and labor markets don't clear, right? So you get big pile-ups of surplus labor, unemployment, cyclical unemployment. But even when times are good, labor markets do not clear. You still have what's called structural unemployment, people who would like a job at the prevailing wage but can't find one. So what neoclassical microeconomics does is it says there's some supply of labor based on people's reservation wage, their willingness to work for a given wage, and there's some demand based on the marginal revenue product of labor in firms. And at the intersection of the two, you get an equilibrium wage and an equilibrium labor, and the market clears, which means not that there's not anybody out there who wishes they could work, but there's nobody out there who wishes they could work at the prevailing wage. right? So there might be people up here who say, geez, I wish I could get a job at my reservation wage. But of course you can get a job at your reservation wage. It's above what people are willing to pay. What we really don't want to see is that there's people whose reservation wage is below the prevailing wage, which should mean that they should be able to get a job by underbidding somebody who currently has one, who nonetheless can't get a job. That is structural unemployment. What we actually see is wages in the market such that there are people here who would be delighted to take a job at the prevailing wage but can't find one. That's structural unemployment. It can't be explained by simple models that you learned in 100 day, and it's actually quite hard to explain with any model. Okay, so let me just, boy, I really hope I'll at least finish up the first half of this lecture. Let me just touch on this first one, Kahneman connection failure, a different Kahneman connection. I think we've now seen 3 papers that are called Kahneman connection failure. And they explain wage stickiness as a response to fairness concerns. They went out and surveyed a ton of people on what kinds of behavior by firms are considered fair and not fair. And what they found was that lowering wages or raising prices in goods markets to prevent a loss of baseline profits is considered fair. But doing so just to make extra profits in response to short-term fluctuations, right, a surplus of labor supply or excess demand, right, this is the snow shovels in a blizzard, is considered to be unfair, not fair. Right? So in a cyclical downturn, profit-maximizing firms should take advantage of the surplus labor and drop their wages down, hire a bunch more people, and get back to equilibrium and clear the market. So the idea here is that fairness concerns prevent that from happening. George Akerlof, who won, as I'm sure you know, won a Nobel Prize for other work, came up with an explanation for structural unemployment as a result of gift exchange in labor markets, which is a sociological concept very much related to the psychological reciprocity we've been looking at. And basically what it says is, it's based on positive reciprocity. The idea is there's some minimum wage that a firm could pay you that you would accept to show up and do the minimum amount of work required for the job. But the firm decides to give you more than that, a gift, in the hope that you will then do more than the minimum required on the job, an exchange of gifts. And if that's the case, then you might expect that in equilibrium, there would be somebody else who would come along and say, look, I'm willing to accept the minimum wage and do the minimum work. I would like that job. I like my neighbor's high wage. I would do that job for $1 an hour less. And the firm says, no, I'm not willing to pay you $1 an hour less, even though it would still be profitable for me to do so, even though you could imagine a non-gift exchange equilibrium in which I would choose to do so. I'm engaged in gift exchange here, and I'm getting more bang for my buck by paying a higher wage, and then you would get this situation. People willing to accept the wage that they see their neighbors getting, firms not willing to pay less. Okay? Which can explain long-term structural unemployment in ways that have been tested, and I'm out of time, so I can't show you the test, but it'll be online, so you can check it out.